I spent my time in a quaint little import store, a stone's throw from Piccadilly Circus in the heart of London. I wasn't looking for anything, just looking at the curiosities on display. "Hello, Peter," I heard a familiar female voice softly call out a name I hadn't been addressed by in a long time. I turned and found myself staring into the green eyes that still made my heart race. It's amazing the gamut of feelings that can sweep over you in a split second. I felt a flutter in my chest, surprise, confusion, a desire to embrace this woman, and finally, cold bitterness. I stared at her for what seemed like 10 minutes, but probably less than 10 seconds. I am Peter, and I am a man who has weathered the storms of betrayal. "Hi, Barbara, what a surprise," I said, going back to watching, not wanting to engage her in conversation, but knowing full well that it was unavoidable. Barbara, I knew, would never leave things alone. "Do you have a few minutes to chat? I'll let you buy the girl a coffee and we can talk," Barbara offered teasingly. "I don't think so, Barbara. I have time, but I'm not sure we have anything to talk about," I said flatly. I didn't want to be polite to the woman who'd ruined my life. I knew she would persist, but she would have to work for it. I heard a quiet sigh and then, "Please, Peter, I'd like to talk to you and I'll get coffee." I stared at her dumbly for a while, and then I gave up. "Okay, but call me Peter. I'm not called Peter anymore." She rolled her eyes slightly and said with a touch of arrogance, "I think I've earned the right to call you Peter if I want to." "Okay, sweetie, have it your way," I said. She was visibly shocked that I was using the long-buried affectionate address I used when we were together on happier days. I would teasingly approach her from behind, hugging and caressing her. I always said in a whiny voice, "Come upstairs, sweetie, and give me some love. I'm needy, sweetie. I must have you. Please, sweetie, let's get naked." Invariably, she would shriek and giggling say, "Get away from me, you pervert. You won't get any love until I'm ready. Go take a cold shower, you booger." Often, these one-act plays would devolve into me playfully chasing her around the house or her spraying me with the kitchen sprayer. It was all fun, and we both enjoyed it. It was a good time. "You're right, Peter," she said softly and sadly. I was surprised by her reaction and sensed that there was more behind that surrender than could be explained in words. She walked briskly to the counter and spoke to the owner in a language I had no idea about. The short Asian woman behind the counter looked at me, nodded solemnly, and then bowed, inviting us into a small coffee bar at the back of the store. There were 2 small tables in front of the bar surrounded by wicker chairs. We chose a table, sat down, and a smiling woman brought us 2 coffees without even thinking. Barbara chose the chair facing the bar and the wall, and I went around the table and took the chair facing the door. Muscle memory doesn't forget. It was a ritual we had practiced thousands, maybe millions of times in our 24 years of marriage. I had to face the door. It was a nervous tick left over, if you will, from my time in Vietnam. After all this time, we still observed our rituals. I think we both noticed it, judging by the curious half-smile that appeared on Barbara's pretty face. We sat in silence for a long time, and despite my best efforts, my mind wandered back to the last time I'd seen this beautiful woman, my ex-wife. We lived in a small town in Connecticut, and I considered us a happily married couple. For the past few months, my wife seemed distant. I saw and talked to her every day, but I felt a disconnect between us. I tried to ignore this and redoubled my efforts to draw her away and bring her close to me again, to make her happy. Our 2 children by then had left home, trying to establish themselves in their new roles as adults. Nicholas, our son and the oldest, was 23 years old and had just graduated from college. In his senior year of high school, he married a sweet girl named Sarah, whom everyone adored. He and Sarah both work in New York City and take the train to their small townhouse in New Jersey. They had achieved some success and were, and still are, deeply in love with each other. It was beautiful to see. Our second child was our ball of lightning daughter, Emily, who was 21 years old. She is the apple of my eye, a feature of Daddy's daughters, and our wild child. I held my breath and self-control most of the time while she was in high school. However, by her second year of college, she finally realized that all the heat we were heaping on her was for her good, calmed down, and soon graduated with a bachelor's degree, appearing frequently on the dean's list. So there you go. I was editing an article that was to appear in one of the magazines published by my employer when I got a call from my wife. "Hey, Peter, it's Barbara. Would you like to have lunch with me today? I know it's an urgent invitation, but I thought it would be fun to do something out of the ordinary for a change." I was thrilled. "Sure, babe. That sounds like a great idea. I'm glad you called. Do you have someplace in mind, or should I pick?" "Meet me at Café Paris in, say, 45 minutes. Is that okay with you?" Barbara asked in a professional, measured tone. It felt like distance was still being maintained, but at least it was a start. I was beyond excited and hoped for a warming of our relationship. "I'll be there with bells on. Maybe I should wear something else," I said with a grin, trying to lighten the mood and show how pleased I was. "Yes, please," she replied, not very cheerfully. "Okay, I'll see you at 12:15. "Thanks, babe. That's a great idea. I love you," I said, getting up from the table and pulling out my jacket with a wide grin on my face. She simply said, "Okay, I'll see you soon." I hurried to my car and drove across town to meet my favorite wife for lunch. I cannot describe how thrilled I was by this simple gesture on her part. When I entered, she was sitting at the table with a glass of wine. I touched her shoulder and leaned over to kiss her. She turned her head slightly and gave me a peck on the cheek. I guess that should have told me something. "Hey, gorgeous, looking for a date?" I said, smiling stupidly. She smirked slightly. "Let's order so we have more time to talk afterward." We ordered, and she started talking about some translation projects she was working on at the import-export company where she worked as a language specialist. I ate and listened to her, but I started to feel a little uncomfortable. She hardly touched her food. After the dishes were put away, she paid the bill with her business credit card, saying that everything was fine and that her boss knew she was treating me to lunch. She looked down for quite a while and was silent. I was about to ask what was wrong when she, looking me straight in the eye, said, "Peter, you can't just say that." "Peter, I've been having an affair for about 8 months. I love him, and I want a divorce." I was stunned, shocked, and destroyed in one fell swoop. I stared at her in silence, unable to speak. My world split in half in an instant. Never in my life, not even after what I had seen in the war, had I been so shocked. I was broken at the core. I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. Everything was lost. I was lost. She went on to tell me that he was extremely wealthy, a billionaire in fact, and that he would be picking up all the costs of the divorce. Since he is so rich, they would not claim anything in the divorce. I could keep everything. I seem to remember her saying something about my little assets staying intact. At the word possessions, she made a disgusted gesture with quotes in the air. I knew she was talking, but I couldn't hear anything. It was as if I was in a tunnel where I could see my wife's lips moving, but I couldn't hear a sound. All the words were like bells ringing for my death. Then she continued, "This is what I want, Peter, and it's in our mutual interest if you don't resist. Fighting it will only prolong the agony, but the result will be the same. I'm leaving for Europe with him tonight, and I won't be back." She did say, "Won't be back any time soon, at least not until the divorce is final. Please let it happen without interference. You have always had a vested interest in my happiness, and this is something that will make me very happy. I'll call the children when I'm settled in Paris. I'm not sure how they will take it, but you needn't worry about that." With those words, she got up and walked out of my life, and I was still sitting there, not believing what had happened. The kids, as it turned out, didn't take to it very well. They were just as stunned and hurt as I was. She never called them, and I had to break the news to them myself. I was effectively accused of killing her and disposing of her body. The months following my wife's passing were horrible. My children and I fought fiercely, digging into our hearts about what we had done to make it happen and exchanging accusations. I was able to get the name and some information about Barbara's beau from her office unofficially. I then started searching the internet for any pictures or articles about him. Fortunately, I was able to find several photos of him with a radiant Barbara in his arms, taken after she had left, which definitively disproved the suggestion that I had anything to do with her disappearance. Interestingly, she was not mentioned in any of the photos, even though several people were listed in the captions. They were trying to keep their home life private. After about a year, I was able to get my new life together, and began to take an interest in life again. During this time, I became friends with a few select disgruntled employees of Barbara's former employer. I found out that senior executives not only knew about Barbara's affair, but also provided cover for her. It seems that some of her beau's companies provided a lot of work and products for trade, so they thought it was in their best interest to make him happy. They even sent out memos to some employees advising them to keep things quiet and ignore what was going on. Barbara's scheming took place on company time. Can you say lawsuit? Yes, I sued them. Now I'm living quite comfortably off them. I don't get my pound of flesh from Barbara or her beau. Note, part of our divorce agreement was that I would never reveal the identity of her beau, blah blah blah, but I don't mind making the guilty party feel my pain. It's been 3+ years since our last lunch, and I found myself sitting at a communal table across from my favorite ex-wife. She still looked very beautiful, the best clothes, hair, and makeup that money could buy, but she had a tired, sad look. Those soulful green eyes of hers, the eyes I'd always adored, told me nothing. She seemed to be dead inside. When she was happy or excited, those eyes would dance, flash, and sparkle with life. Today, the fire had gone out. Happiness was still eluding her. "You look good, Peter. Probably lost weight and got a little more muscular." She started the conversation. "Thank you," I said simply. This was her show. She wanted it, and she could pull it off. "I can't believe we ran into each other in London. What are the odds?" she continued. "Yeah, it's pretty hard to believe," I parried. "I've been doing a lot of translating in my new position, and I've even learned a couple of new languages." She continued to fish around for an opportune moment. "I've always been impressed by that about you. You're a very talented and beautiful woman." I finally opened up. She suddenly lowered her eyes and wept. "Thank you," she whispered. "I haven't been getting any recognition lately. I'm not sure anyone even knows I'm alive. I thought your husband was going to put you on display." "He never married me. I'm just an adult toy that can speak multiple languages. If he wants to make a good impression on someone, he takes me out to show them a good time and talk to them in their language. A 40-year-old American woman who can speak more than English can show people around almost anywhere and is willing to get late is, I think, rare. I've become a valuable whore," she said sadly. "What? Why don't you leave? Get on the nearest plane and get the hell out of Dodge?" I said hopelessly. "It's complicated. I live a very, very good life, but I'm being watched all the time. It would be very hard for me to leave. The only reason I can talk to you now is because we met by chance and I didn't leave the store. Also, Ma, the owner, is a friend of mine, and she kind of has my back if I need to hide for a while." It sounds awful, but I guess it's your choice. Okay, let's change the subject. Why didn't you ever call the kids? I had a really hard time convincing them that I didn't kill you or get rid of your body. They were devastated that they never heard from you. I was now insisting on answers. She only seemed to sink further into sadness. I wasn't allowed. I left that afternoon on a private jet, and access to my former life was completely cut off from me. As I said, I was being watched all the time. She suddenly leaned forward and looked directly at me. "Peter, I can't tell you how many nights I lay alone in a big house in an exotic place and wished I was still lying next to you in our home in Connecticut. God, I miss you, and I miss us." She sighed, her voice thick with a melancholic longing. I could feel myself reverting to an old habit, fixing everything to make Barbara happy. I saw myself being sucked back in and froze. Wait, I said, raising my hands in surrender. "I can't fix your life for you. What's more, I will not fix your life. How dare you sit here and whine about your life? You did this. You chose this. A whole bunch of people I dearly love had to live and deal with the situation you created for them. It was not what they wanted or chose for themselves. Their lives were forever changed because of choices and decisions that you made without their consent or participation." My voice grew louder and sharper, fueled by years of suppressed anger. "I happened to run into you for the first time in 3 years, and it's already all about you? Damn, I'm already tired. You know, you haven't asked about your kids yet. What kind of mother does that? For your information, you're a grandmother now. Nicholas and Sarah have a cute little girl who's going to be 2 in a couple of months if you're interested. Her name is Donna Lynn. Your daughter Emily, remember her? She's planning on marrying a nice guy named Tom in about 6 months. She's still hoping you'll be at the wedding, but it's really hard when we have no address or way to contact you. Maybe I'll send an invitation here." I started hyperventilating and paused, but I was on a roll. All my pent-up anger and resentment was spilling out. As far as I was concerned, what the hell did I do to deserve the kind of treatment you subjected me to? I loved you with everything I am and everything I had. You left me without even saying goodbye. Do you realize that you never once apologized for ruining my life? Don't sit here and whine. Asterisk. You asterisk ruined everything. You lost us. You lost asterisk me asterisk. Are you looking for a shoulder to cry on? You can't do that here. You killed that privilege 3 goddamn years ago in a little cafe in Connecticut. I was about to get up and leave, just like she did 3 years ago, when an angelic voice with a distinctly English accent broke into the fiery twilight. "Peter, I sure as hell can't leave you alone for even 5 minutes without you chatting up some beautiful woman. I swear I should beat you half to death," she joked, trying to look angry, but her blue eyes flashed with mischief. I was so engrossed in my rant that I didn't even notice Melissa walk in. I smiled warmly. "Hi, baby. Melissa, I'd like you to meet Barbara, my ex-wife. Barbara, this is my friend Melissa." Barbara was still reeling from my verbal assault, and now she was face to face with her replacement. She was silent, struggling to keep her composure. Melissa simply extended her hand in the traditional friendly gesture and said, smiling, "I'm very pleased to meet you, Barbara. Peter has often mentioned you, but not very warmly, I'm afraid. I suppose I should thank you for letting that lusty fellow go and giving me a chance to get a grip on him. He can be quite a nuisance, but I am gradually accustoming him to the house." Melissa looked at me and smiled broadly. She stroked my shoulder fondly and continued, "Peter, my crazy Peter, I'm afraid we must be off if we are to catch the train to Ely. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm worried about the time." I patted her leg. "Don't worry, my sweetie. I'm just finishing up." Then I turned to the still struggling Barbara and said, "We have to run, but thanks for the coffee and for your time. I'll tell the kids you said hi for me and tell them you said you love them, even though that's a bit of a lie." I shook her hand and then said, "I hope, Barbara, that you find your happiness someday, but I'm afraid you're looking in the wrong place. Thank you also for 23 good years. They were mostly happy years for me, and I thank you for that. Goodbye, Barbara." Barbara continued to sit with the same shocked look as I had 3 long years ago. Melissa and I stepped out into the bustling life of London to meet the appointed train. She never asked about the reunion, but I think she heard enough to know that it was not a joyous reunion. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Yes, I felt free, and even a little happy. Let's conclude the story shortly. As Melissa and I stepped out into the bustling life of London, the weight of the encounter pressed heavily on me. Barbara, still frozen in that cafe, mirrored the shattered man I had been 3 years ago. Melissa, bless her soul, never pried, but the air thrummed with unspoken questions. Her presence, her warmth, was a lifeline pulling me back to the present. On the train to Ely, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels against the tracks became a soothing mantra. The English countryside, a tapestry of rolling green hills and quaint villages, unfolded before us. Its serenity began to seep into my soul, slowly replacing the turmoil within. That night, nestled in Melissa's arms, a strange peace settled over me. It wasn't the euphoric bliss of new love, but a deeper, more profound sense of closure. The ghost of Barbara, the specter of my shattered past, finally began to fade. I realized then that forgiveness, true forgiveness, wasn't about absolving her, but about releasing myself from the shackles of bitterness and resentment. It was about reclaiming my happiness and my future. And as the dawn broke over Ely, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, I felt a new lightness in my heart. The past, though forever etched in my memory, no longer held me captive. I was free to embrace the present, cherish the love of a good woman, and look forward to a future filled with hope and possibility. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.
All right, Everyone's presentations are done," Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." "Absolutely right." His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.